Welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break, where we are pleased to welcome Dr. Robert Helmer to the conversation. We are all aware of the turbulent waters in which higher education is floating right now, a seismic shift in demographics for those of college age, the lure of convenient online learning, and the increasing costs of a residential college experience, to name just a few. As the ninth president of Baldwin Wallace University, Dr. Robert Helmer is navigating these waters with keen insight as to how to position smaller institutions to weather these times. He is widely recognized as a dynamic and visionary leader who simultaneously tends to curriculum, student life, fundraising, a strong faculty, and of course, the facilities arms race. Prior to serving at Baldwin Wallace, he was president of Lourdes University for over 9 years. The environment today is vastly different from when he first took the presidential helm over 2 decades ago, and quite changed from when he assumed his current presidency almost 9 years ago. His challenge is not to just lead for today, but to lead for and into tomorrow. He is looking at where Baldwin Wallace will sit a decade from now. His expertise is tapped frequently by national boards, the Higher Learning Commission, and the Council of Independent Colleges, and also at the state level, where he sits on the boards of the Association for Independent Colleges and Universities and the Ohio Foundation of Independent Colleges. His new Strategic Pathways initiative has led to a 13% increase in enrollment in the freshman class and a 3% increase in enrollment overall. Student retention is up, applications are up, and national rankings are rising too. He also gives back mightily through community service on local boards, and we are proud to call him an alumnus of Leadership Cleveland. Dr. Helmer, I give it to you.
Thanks, Marianne, and good afternoon, everyone. Marianne, that's about as formal as I've heard you. Everyone, I go by Bob, not Dr. Robert, and you did a really nice job summarizing the challenges and the changes in higher education. So we could probably go straight to Q&A, but I do have just a few slides, but Marianne really did capture what are the challenges facing higher ed. I'm finishing 22 years right now of being a president in Ohio of a university, and it has changed. There is no doubt about it. But there are some things that haven't. And so if I could just share my screen for just a couple minutes, I have a very few number of slides, and then let's talk. Because when I looked at the list of people joining us today, many of you are my colleagues in higher education. And I will end my remarks by saying together, we can make higher ed work. Individually, it's going to be a challenge, but together. So I'm assuming you can see my screen okay, changes and challenges in post-secondary education. So let me start by saying what hasn't changed. And my time horizon is 22 years. What hasn't changed? The fundamental value of higher education has not changed. The data will show it. And I've got just a couple slides here. The data continues. This is 2021. The data continues to show that if you have a bachelor's degree, at every level that you increase in education, your earnings increase over the span of your lifetime. This has not changed. There is a narrative out there, but one of the challenges, just fast forwarding for a minute, one of the challenges I believe is social media and the media. We have become a nation of anecdotes, and anecdotes are not statistics. And you see this in mainstream media. The New York Times a few years ago published the large profile of the graduate of college who graduated with $120,000 in debt. That's an anecdote. That is not the national average. For BW, our graduates graduate with approximately $29,000 in debt, which is roughly equal to the cost of a new car. And BW has consistently been in that new car range. And no one doubts the value of a new car. But a college education today, people question, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the earning power of getting a degree continues to be strong. And here you can see 33,000 with a high school diploma, 59,000 with a bachelor's, 79 with a graduate, And this data is only 2.5 years old. So this has not changed. And I don't think anyone sees this changing. When you look at the forecasts for employment in our country, the need for bachelor's degrees, advanced degrees, it is not going to diminish. Even with AI, people are saying it is not going to diminish. So one thing that has not changed is the value financially of getting a college degree. Secondly, the societal impact of people who are well educated. And I could have chosen a number of slides. I picked two. Volunteer. People with a college education are 18% more likely to volunteer than those without. And certainly here at BW, our hundreds and hundreds, my quick profile of BW, 3,400 students, roughly 2,600 of those are undergraduate, 800 are graduate. Of the 2,600 undergraduate, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds volunteer in our community, Northeast Ohio, every week of the academic year. It is part of the mission of universities to have an impact on their region. And certainly here at BW, and I'm sure the other schools that are represented today, you see the same. So from a national perspective, we need people who are educated, who are going to understand the value of service to our country and to those in need. I know the election year is upon us. College graduates are more likely to vote, 78% with a bachelor's degree versus 56% without a bachelor's degree. Again, our nation needs well-educated individuals. For sure, college is not for everyone. And so these should not be blanket statements. I still remember a couple years ago when my nephew graduating from high school, I'm sure my sister made him call. He called me, and with trembling in his voice, he wanted to let his Uncle Bob know that he was not going to college. He was going to become an auto repairman. He had a technical program he was getting into, and he loves cars. And I wished him all the best because that is exactly what he should be doing. And he's been doing it. He's married, kids, wonderful life. College is not necessary for everyone. But as a country, we want our people to be educated. I could have chosen other slides. If you have a college degree, you're much more likely to be healthy than if you don't have a college degree. So my point here is the value of a college degree has not changed over the past 22 years. What has changed? And I'm going to highlight two. One is the perceived value. So if the statistics and the facts show that the value has not changed, the perception has greatly changed. We are in a state where there are many in our state legislature who have bachelor's degrees, who have children who have bachelor's degrees, and they will publicly say there is not a value to bachelor's degrees. 22 years ago, I never would have expected that I would be having conversations with legislators, convincing them, trying to convince them that a bachelor's degree is worthwhile. So what has changed? This is the headline article in this morning's Inside Higher Ed. Inside Higher Ed is a national electronic newsletter. Pretty much everybody in higher ed subscribes to it. Doug, the head of it, is a Cleveland native. This was the lead story. Doubts about value are deterring college enrollment. This is widespread, and it arises from anecdotes. Later on in the article, for those of you who subscribe to Inside Higher Ed, it's a free publication. So I encourage everyone, regardless of your industry, because higher education is an important part of our country. Later on in this article, you will read social media is pointed out as one of the strong deterrents to enrollment in college because of the anecdotes people are seeing on social media. So there is a perception that college enrollment, college degrees are not worthwhile anymore. It isn't true, but it is a perception. So that is one major thing that has changed. The second is where we are as a country with our birth rates. This is a look back at our entire country. You can see here from 73 to 1990, birth rates 33% increase, 1991 to 07, 5% increase. And here we are, the Great Recession of 07, 08, and the birth rates began to fall. And they have continued to fall, and they continue to fall. And you can see a decline of 16.5%. And what this means is, of course, that there are fewer individuals who are of college graduation age looking to go to college. And this, you can see here, the big drop comes in 25, 26, 27, which corresponds to 18 years after the Great Recession. I was actually in a discussion with someone who was criticizing me, saying, well, that's an interesting theory, that there's going to be fewer students ready to go to college. And I chuckled and I said, well, no, it's not a theory. They weren't born in 2007, 2008. They were not born. And so they are not able to graduate from high school because they aren't here. This is not a theory. This is fact. But again, these anecdotes that are out there, and I know many businesses struggle with this issue, but a challenge for higher education, one thing that has changed is the outlook for high school graduates, and it is going to decline dramatically. Here we are, this is this year, the high point of 110,000, and then it drops dramatically over the next years down to a little over 100, and there's a slight rebound forecast of 102. And the pandemic is factored into this a little bit, in that in this model, it slows a little, but it is going to decline dramatically, the number of high school graduates. And so that is the second major challenge facing higher education. Here in Ohio, we are fortunate to have so many opportunities for higher education. If you go, and I did this morning just to double check my numbers, if you go to the Secretary of State's website for the state of Ohio, Frank LaRose, you will see that we have 14 public universities with 24 branch campuses. We have 23 technical and community colleges, and then we have 51 private independent universities in Ohio. That is a great choice list for everyone, but honestly, it is far too many colleges for a state where we will see our enrollments and our population decline. It's just far too many. On the end, I can speak for the independent side, 51 independent universities in Ohio. All I can think is that back in the 1800s, a whole group of people from Connecticut got together and they looked at each other and said, let's go see the Pacific Ocean. And they took off. And when they got to Ohio, they looked at each other and said, I'm tired. Let's Lake Erie. That I can't see the other side. That's close enough. And they set up universities and colleges throughout our state. And for 100, BW is 179 years old. We were founded in 1845. We're one of the earliest. For over 100 years, all these schools have been a part of our state higher education fabric. But honestly, it is too many for what is ahead. When you think about the demographic cliff, when you think about the continued erosion of public confidence in higher education, no matter what the statistics and facts show, this is the picture for higher education looking forward. So I will end my slides with two quotes. They both say the same thing. Both of them attributed to a dozen different people, so I'm not going to pick which one I think said it. The first one, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. I've always liked that saying. And the second one, which I have used several times at BW, dig the well before you are thirsty. This one's attributed to a lot of different people as well. Dig the well before you are thirsty. Higher education is about to become very thirsty in our state as the enrollments in high schools decline dramatically, as the graduation numbers, the absolute numbers, decline dramatically. And so I am going to stop sharing my screen there. And in my last 1 minute before Mary Ann wants to go to Q&A, a couple thoughts on how schools can move forward. And we're seeing examples of this. I will say, even with the erosion of confidence and perception in higher education, even with the demographics working against us, I have never been more excited for the future of higher education, because these are opportunities for this sector of our state to evolve in new ways that aren't even on the table yet, that will meet the needs of our region and of our economy and of our workforce and of our people. And what excites me is the thread of the future is going to be, we're not going to do this alone. BW, the next 179 years of BW, the first 179 years, we pretty much did our thing on our own. We're here in Berea, nice little suburb of Cleveland. The next 179 years, as BW continues to serve our region, it's going to be in partnerships with others. And it's going to be in new ways. And when I think of the individuals who are on this screen, Youngstown State is doing amazing things with apprenticeships, which didn't used to be part of the thought of a university. That was left to others. Amazing things are happening there. Here on my own campus, as I just think of today, this morning, I was with about 29 major businesses in our region who are here on our campus for risk and analytics. And in talking with them, they clearly see higher education, and in this particular case, BW in particular, as able to help them advance the work of their individual businesses. That partnership between universities and the companies, the businesses, that will continue to strengthen. And we need that to happen. This afternoon, I will end my time in the office this afternoon with meeting with the School of Business Advisory Council, which is another group of a few dozen businesses here in our region whose sole purpose is to help BW ensure that our curriculum meets the needs of those businesses. Our business curriculum, we do not exist in a vacuum. We cannot be an ivory tower. We must meet the needs of our region. It's part of the responsibility of universities. And so I'll end my afternoon in the office with the advisory council and hearing from them. Here's what they see at BW that's working incredibly well and is invaluable in their work. This particular part of the university, these particular programs, you need to reshape them a little bit. That interplay between the universities and their communities, whether it's businesses, not-for-profits, government, that is the future of higher education in our region and in our state. There will be new ways of operating that will advance not only our universities. We will shrink in number. As Mary Ann said, BW is in a growth mode, 13% increase in freshmen, 3% overall. Applications for next fall are ahead. But that is not the narrative of every university in our state. So we will see a decline in the number, but the need will increase. And so to the extent that we work together as leaders of our community, as leaders of our region, we will all prosper and we will advance the work. So Mary Ann, I'll stop right there. And 12:19, I went 4 minutes past my 12:15 you gave me, and see what people want to talk about.
Great, Bob. Thank you so much. So you mentioned that there's so many messages being advanced on social media around the value of higher education and the lack of the value. What are you all doing at BW to try to combat those messages, and how can those of us on the call work to do the same?
Yeah, we have to become part of the narrative, right? So when social media started, I think universities thought, well, that's interesting. And we watched our students, do their thing on social media. And then we began to understand that social media is an opportunity for us to advance the importance of our universities and to advance the importance of enrolling, whether it's at BW or another school. Bachelor's degrees are important. And so we need to be a part of the narrative. And actually that Inside Higher Ed article that I had up talks about that higher ed needs to reshape that article in every opportunity there is. And so, for me as a president, and I know my fellow presidents in Ohio, we spend a lot of time talking to legislators, helping to reshape the narrative because their narrative isn't necessarily correct. Or with business leaders, we need every opportunity possible to reshape the narrative, to use facts and statistics, and to clearly articulate that higher education is a value individually to the students, to their families, to their communities, and to our region. And if everyone in the call, whatever school you went to, promote that school. And if for whatever reason you don't like that school, promote BW. But promote your school because we need people enrolled in our country needs people enrolled in higher education.
We've heard quite a bit over the past year or so about the lasting impact of the pandemic on students at all levels. And I'm curious to see, what are you all seeing in the classrooms for your students coming into BW and the impact that the pandemic has had? And how are you working to kind of bring them back up to speed?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rachel. There is no doubt, and I'm assuming my colleagues at other schools that are on this call, you're seeing the same thing because it's a national narrative. Students are less prepared. The pandemic certainly impacted their learning in high school, and we're going to see this continue, right? This isn't just the junior and senior classes of high school are less prepared. It goes all the way back into grade schools. And so here at BW, we put a significant amount of our resources into bringing people up to college level material. We have programs designed, whether it be for academic support or first generation college students. And I know every school does this, but we certainly are seeing the impact of the pandemic that way. Without a doubt, the mental health and wellness of our students was impacted by the pandemic. Another national narrative, schools cannot put enough resources into mental health to be there to support their students. And the final thing I'll say, going back to enrollment, the pandemic, I think, really caused young people to not feel real confident about the future. And, what does the future mean for them, for their families? They saw their families suffer, perhaps a layoff during the pandemic. And so there's a national narrative out there among young people that the future itself feels pretty concerning, pretty uncertain. And we need to help with that. And obviously, I'm a little biased in this, but I believe higher education is one way to provide young people the tools, the grounding that they need to be able to feel confident about the future, and not only confident about it, but to go out and shape it.
Given the large density of colleges and universities here in Northeast Ohio, how do collaboration and partnership opportunities ensure survival and creating a thriving environment for all?
Yeah. Honestly, it's a relatively new thing for higher education to partner, to look out to each other. But today it happens, just regularly. I'm in regular contact with my fellow presidents, both on the public side, on the private side, exploring, looking for opportunities on both sides of the equation. On the expense side, are there ways that we can work together, that we can share resources? And that can be anything from, I don't know, is there an opportunity for us to share back of office kinds of functions and leverage volume? Two, are there ways for us to collaborate on curriculum? Here at BW, for instance, we need to teach German because we have a nationally ranked opera program, and opera a lot of times is in German. But do we need to teach the German, or can we look at one of the other universities that has a really strong German program and partner with them? So the opportunities, I think, are incredible and endless for how we move forward.
As you look at the student population and those coming into the university, what is the makeup? Where are you drawing from? Is it mainly local, out of state, a mix of ages?
Yeah. So here at BW, we're about 70% from Ohio and about 30% from the rest of the country. We have a couple nationally ranked programs that draw, from all over the United States. But for the most part, we're an Ohio university. We've always been rooted here in our community of Northeast Ohio. We recruit from really a 300-mile radius. 90% of our students come from 300 miles. And that is not unusual for independent private universities. Publics, of course, draw from a broader array. Actually, Team NEO, the Talent Development Council, and the Cleveland Talent Alliance, we just were looking at something along these lines. It's currently only 48% of college graduates in Ohio remain in Ohio. Only 48%. And so we're working together, universities and businesses, especially here in Northeast Ohio, to change that narrative and to introduce them to the life of Northeast Ohio, which step foot in Northeast Ohio. You want to be a part of this community. This is a great place to live, to work, to raise a family. So we're working to change that narrative. Other schools, working adults. BW, for us, we do have a fair number of working adults, but it's not the majority of our population. It is a large population in Ohio, though, that is under-credentialed in terms of bachelor's degrees. And so, BW is stepping up its efforts, as I know many schools are, to serve that population as well, even as the 18-year-olds decline.
So you mentioned the opportunity to evolve as a sector. However, that higher ed can often come with high levels of bureaucracy and oversight. What advice do you have for how to best tackle change management across different internal stakeholders?
Yeah. Well, I just said to the leadership here of BW yesterday, we should spend some time thinking about how would BW start if we were building it from scratch. We've eliminated a lot of the bureaucracy, a lot of the administrative levels. They aren't necessary. They grew up in a climate where enrollments were increasing nationwide. Universities added. There's a famous saying that if you want to achieve immortality, be an academic program. Higher ed, we bring new programs in, but we do not eliminate them easily. And as a sector, we have not been known for our rapid changing, for our ability to evolve quickly. The pandemic, one positive from the pandemic is it demonstrated to each of our campuses, if push comes to shove, we can do this, right? It was exactly 4 years ago today. It was March 13th of 2020 when Governor DeWine's office reached out to all the presidents at just about this time to say, I want to have a conference call with you before my 2 o'clock press conference. And then at the 2 o'clock, and his conference call was to give us a heads up that by the end of the afternoon, we would all be online universities, that in-person had to cease. And we all did it. We all did it. We can evolve quickly when the need is. And I would suggest the need, dig the well before you're thirsty. It's the drought is coming. So
We have time for one more question. As you look ahead, where do you see BW in the next 5 years?
in the next 5 years, we think out much further than that. BW, our fastest growing programs are in the sciences, the health sciences, and in business. We're well known for our Conservatory of Music, of course, our music theater program, but that's only a small piece of our university. Someone on the call, Jim McCarger, is one of our deans of science. His background is the new Knowlton Center, our new $25 million computer science building. We are surging in the enrollment in sciences, health sciences, business. I see BW very intentionally connecting the dots between this university and the businesses and communities of our region so that we can meet those needs.
Great. Well, Dr. Helmer, Bob, thank you so very much for your time this afternoon. Your words are truly inspirational and I think give us great hope for the future of higher ed, but in particular BW. BW is very fortunate to have you leading it into the future. So thank you for all that you are doing.